Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the red beam slice through space toward New Geneva Colony. The Vortex ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming under the distant star's light. Their weapons fired with deadly precision, but something felt wrong to Marcus. He had been fighting the Vortex Empire for 3 years now, and their aim was getting worse, not better. The colony below erupted in flames as the alien bombardment continued. Marcus watched the tactical display and counted the missed shots. 17 direct hits on non-essential buildings, 43 near misses on the power plant, and not a single strike on the defense grid that could actually fight back. Either the Vortex were having the worst targeting day in military history, or something else was happening here. "Sir, the Vortex fleet is withdrawing," reported Lieutenant Tom Brady from the communications station. "They're leaving the system." Marcus frowned. The aliens always left just when human reinforcements arrived. Always. In every battle he had fought, the timing was perfect. Too perfect. He pulled up the battle records on his personal tablet and began reviewing the last dozen engagements. The pattern was clear once he looked for it. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the bridge carrying a datapad. She was the ship's xenobiologist responsible for studying alien technology and behavior. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her brown eyes showed the same confusion Marcus felt. "Captain, I need to show you something," Elena said quietly. "I've been monitoring Vortex communications during the attack." Marcus moved to a private corner of the bridge with her. Elena activated her datapad and showed him a series of wave patterns. "These are the encrypted signals between their ships," she explained. "But look at this secondary channel I discovered." The screen showed another set of signals, much more complex than the first. Elena pointed to specific sections that repeated in regular intervals. "These aren't battle communications," she said. "These are mathematical sequences that predict exactly when our reinforcements will arrive." The signal started broadcasting 30 minutes before Admiral Chun's fleet even received our distress call. Marcus felt cold. He stared at the data, trying to find another explanation. There wasn't one. "Are you saying they knew we were coming before we called for help?" "I'm saying someone told them we were coming," Elena replied. "Someone with access to our military communications?" Marcus looked back at the main screen where the last Vortex ship was disappearing into hyperspace. The colony below was burning, but the fires were strangely organized. They formed almost artistic patterns across the settlement, like someone had planned exactly which buildings would be hit. "Elena, keep this between us for now," Marcus said. "I want you to dig deeper into those communications. Find out everything you can." She nodded and left the bridge. Marcus remained at the observation window, staring at the burning colony. 3,000 people lived down there, and somehow most of them had survived another Vortex attack. The aliens had superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and strategic advantages, yet they kept failing to achieve decisive victories. Over the next few hours, Marcus reviewed every piece of data from the battle. The Vortex had brought 12 heavy cruisers against 3 human frigates. They should have wiped out the human ships in minutes, but instead they had engaged in a drawn-out firefight that gave the colony time to evacuate. Non-essential personnel, Lieutenant Brady approached with a message tablet. "Sir, we've received new orders from Fleet Command. We're to proceed to the Kepler system immediately. Intelligence reports Vortex movement in that sector." Marcus took the tablet and read the orders. Another colony, another attack, another perfectly timed response. He was beginning to see the pattern that had been invisible before. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters reviewing personnel files. He accessed the service records of every officer who had served in the Vortex War. What he found made his blood run cold. Nearly every senior officer had been promoted rapidly since the war began. Resources that had been scarce during peacetime were now flowing freely to military projects. Elena appeared at his door with new data. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking slightly. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, entering his quarters and activating her tablet. I broke through another layer of Vortex encryption. The screen showed a conversation between 2 Vortex commanders. But something was wrong with the translation software. The alien words appeared first, followed by English subtitles, but the timing was off. The English appeared before the translation program finished processing the alien language. How is that possible? Marcus asked. Elena switched to another file. It gets worse. I found this in the deeper data streams. The new recording showed a Vorthak commander speaking, but this time there were no alien words at all. The voice was clearly speaking English with a slight accent, but the translation software was still running, adding fake alien dialogue over the human speech. Computer, isolate the original audio track, Elena commanded. The alien language disappeared, leaving only a human voice saying, Phase 7 is complete. The humans have responded exactly as predicted. Maintain the illusion and prepare for the next engagement. Remember, we need to keep them engaged, but not destroy their morale completely. Marcus sat in stunned silence. A human was commanding a Vorthak fleet, discussing maintaining an illusion, and talking about keeping humans engaged. The implications were staggering. There's more, Elena continued. She showed him tactical data from the battle. The Vorthak targeting computers are military-grade quantum processors. They're more advanced than anything we have. The margin of error on these systems is less than 1 millimeter at combat range, so their missed shots were intentional. Every single one, Elena confirmed. These computers couldn't miss our ships if they tried. Someone programmed them to avoid critical targets. Marcus stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled toward their next assignment. How many of those stars had witnessed fake battles designed to fool humanity? Elena, I want you to focus on something else. Find out everything you can about how this war started, who made first contact with the Vorthak, what were the circumstances. She nodded and prepared to leave, but Marcus stopped her. And Elena, be careful who you talk to about this. If humans are working with the Vorthak, we don't know how deep this goes. After she left, Marcus accessed his personal communications system and began drafting a message to an old friend in Fleet Intelligence. But as he wrote, he realized he didn't know who to trust. If the war was fake, if humans were involved in the deception, then anyone could be part of the conspiracy. He deleted the message and decided to investigate further before making any reports. But as he prepared for sleep, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The ship's computer systems were connected to Fleet Command, and if someone was monitoring communications, they might already know what he had discovered. The next morning brought new orders and another battle, but now Marcus would be watching everything with different eyes. The perfect enemy was too perfect, and humanity was walking into a trap they couldn't see. The question was whether Marcus could uncover the truth before it was too late, or whether the people behind the deception would silence him first. As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace toward their next engagement, Marcus wondered how many other humans had noticed the inconsistencies and what had happened to them. The war machine continued its relentless advance, but now he knew it was built on lies that someone desperately wanted to keep hidden. Agent Lisa Park crouched in the maintenance shaft of the captured Vorthak vessel, her black stealth suit allowing her to blend into the shadows. Earth Intelligence Division had sent her to extract alien technology, but what she found instead made her question everything she knew about the war. The ship's corridors were eerily familiar. The layout reminded her of human vessel designs, just modified enough to look alien. The lighting was different, colored in deep purples and blues, but the basic structure followed human engineering principles. She had studied dozens of alien ship schematics during her training, and none of them had looked this similar to human designs. Lisa reached the engineering section and began photographing the power systems. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw the manufacturing stamps on the fusion reactor components. The symbols weren't Vorthak text, they were human serial numbers from Earth's largest military contractor, Henderson Industries. She quickly photographed the evidence and moved deeper into the ship. The computer core was her primary target, containing battle plans and strategic information that could help humanity win the war. But as she accessed the alien systems, she found files written in multiple Earth languages: English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and Russian. The battle plans were incredibly detailed, showing not just Vorthik strategies but human responses to every possible scenario. Each plan contained careful notes about human psychology, tactical preferences, and predicted reaction times. It was as if someone had been studying human military behavior for years and creating perfect countermeasures. Lisa downloaded the files onto her portable drive and continued searching. In a hidden directory, she found something that made her hands shake. The folder was labeled Project Synthesis and contained thousands of documents about human colony locations, resource surveys, and population data. But these weren't intelligence reports gathered during the war. They were dated years before first contact with the Vorthik. One file showed detailed mineral surveys of planets that were supposedly discovered during the war. According to the official records, humanity had claimed these worlds after driving off Vorthak forces, but the survey data in this computer was older than the war itself. Someone had known about these resource-rich planets long before the fighting began. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral James Torres sat in his office reviewing the latest reports from the Galactic Council. The alien alliance that had formed to support humanity's war effort was praising human courage and tactical brilliance. But something in their communications bothered him. The council representative spoke about humanity with an odd familiarity, as if they had been studying human culture for decades. Their messages contained references to human literature, historical events, and cultural practices that seemed too detailed for recent allies. They knew things about humanity that even some humans didn't know. Torres pulled up the economic agreements that had been signed during the war. Humanity was gaining access to incredible technology and resources, but the terms were surprisingly favorable. The aliens were practically giving away advanced technology in exchange for human military support against the Vorthak. It didn't make economic sense unless there was another agenda. He cross-referenced the battle locations with the resource surveys. Every major engagement had taken place near planets rich in rare minerals or strategic materials. The battles themselves had resulted in human expansion into these territories, often with minimal casualties despite fighting a supposedly superior enemy. Back on the Vorthak ship, Lisa discovered a chamber that shouldn't have existed. The room was filled with propaganda materials designed to maintain morale during wartime, but these weren't hastily created battle materials. The production quality was too high, the psychological manipulation too sophisticated. These materials had taken years to develop. The propaganda was designed for both sides of the conflict. There were materials meant to inspire human soldiers and separate materials designed to motivate Vorthak forces. But the most disturbing discovery was a series of videos showing human and Vorthak children learning about their ancient enemies. The footage was dated 5 years before the war officially began. Lisa found production notes attached to the propaganda materials. The psychological profiles were incredibly detailed, showing deep understanding of both human and Vorthak emotional responses. But as she read further, she realized the Vorthak psychological profiles were written by humans. The language patterns, cultural references, and analytical methods were clearly human in origin. She photographed everything and prepared to leave, but a new discovery stopped her cold. Hidden behind a false panel was a communication array that wasn't connected to the ship's main systems. This was a secret communications network, and it was still active. Lisa accessed the communication logs and found regular transmissions between this ship and an unknown source. The messages were heavily encrypted, but she recognized the mathematical patterns from Earth's military encryption protocols. Someone was using human encryption to send secret messages to captured Vorthak vessels. As she worked to decode the messages, alarms suddenly filled the ship. Lisa's heart raced as she realized she had triggered some kind of security system. But instead of alien security forces, she heard human voices in the corridors outside. She hid in a storage compartment and listened as the voices passed by. They were speaking in perfect English about maintaining the operational timeline and ensuring the agent doesn't discover too much. These weren't Vortex soldiers, they were humans pretending to be aliens. Lisa managed to escape the ship, but not before downloading one final file that changed everything. The ship's true mission wasn't to attack human colonies, it was to stage attacks that would look devastating, but cause minimal actual damage. The entire crew was human, using advanced holographic technology to appear as aliens. On Earth, Admiral Torres received a priority message that seemed routine at first. The Galactic Council was thanking humanity for another successful operation against the Vorthek. But buried in the diplomatic language was a phrase that chilled him. Your species continues to exceed our expectations in this carefully managed scenario. Torres read the message again, focusing on specific words. Carefully managed scenario wasn't the kind of language allies used to describe a war. It was the language of observers watching an experiment. He began searching through archived communications from the Galactic Council, looking for similar phrases. What he found was a pattern of language that suggested the aliens weren't allies in a war, they were scientists studying human behavior during manufactured conflicts. Lisa returned to Earth with evidence that would shatter everything humanity believed about the war, but she faced a new problem. Who could she trust with information this dangerous? If humans were involved in staging the war, then the conspiracy reached into the highest levels of government and military command. She decided to start with Admiral Torres, whose reputation for integrity was legendary. But as she prepared to contact him, her secure apartment was broken into by unknown intruders. They left no trace of their presence except for a single message on her computer screen. We know what you found. Stop digging or face the consequences. Torres was facing similar pressure. His investigation into the Galactic Council had attracted attention from people who didn't want questions asked. His security clearance was suddenly reviewed, his communications were being monitored, and colleagues were asking him to focus on more important matters. But both Lisa and Torres had seen too much to stop now. The war that had united humanity and driven them to greatness was built on lies, and someone was working very hard to keep those lies hidden. The question was whether they could uncover the truth before the people behind the deception decided they knew too much. As night fell over Earth, Lisa sat in a safe house provided by contacts and intelligence, reviewing the evidence she had gathered. The photos, files, and recordings painted a picture of deception so vast that it involved multiple governments, military organizations, and possibly alien species. Torres worked late in his office, connecting pieces of a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each discovery. The war was fake, but the consequences were real. Humanity was being shaped by manufactured conflict, and someone was pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Both of them knew that tomorrow would bring new dangers as they continued their investigation, but they also knew they couldn't stop. Too much was at stake, and too many people were being deceived. The truth had to come out, no matter what the cost. Engineer David Kim stared at the Vorthek plasma rifle lying on his workbench and felt his world collapse around him. The weapon was identical to the prototype he had designed 18 months ago in his classified laboratory on Mars. Every component, every circuit, every energy pathway was exactly as he had created it, down to the microscopic flaws in the crystal matrix that he had never reported to his supervisors. Colonel Rebecca Stone entered the workshop where David was examining the captured alien weapons. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen too many battles. Her expression was grim as she approached David's workstation. "Find something interesting?" she asked. Though her tone suggested she already knew the answer, David held up the plasma rifle and pointed to a small marking near the power cell. "This is my signature, Colonel. I etched this symbol into every prototype I build." This weapon came from my laboratory, but according to the reports, it was captured from a Vorthak ship that attacked the Titan colony. Rebecca closed the workshop door and activated a privacy field generator. The device hummed quietly as it created a barrier against electronic surveillance. "David, I've been waiting for someone to notice that," she said. "I've been gathering evidence for months, and you're not the first person to recognize their own." work in captured alien technology. She activated a holographic display that showed dozens of weapons, ship components, and technical systems. Each item was marked with identification codes that traced back to human manufacturers. Dr. Sarah Chun recognized her shield generator designs in Vorthik defensive systems. Lieutenant Marcus Wade found his targeting computers in enemy fighters. Engineer Paula Martinez discovered that Vorthik life support systems use her atmospheric processors, Rebecca explained. David sat down heavily as the implications hit him. Our own technology is being used against us. That's what I thought at first, Rebecca replied. But the evidence suggests something much worse. These aren't stolen designs, they're being manufactured specifically for the Vorthik forces. She pulled up manufacturing records from Henderson Industries, the same company whose stamps Lisa Park had found on the alien ship. The records showed massive production runs of advanced military equipment, but the destination codes were marked as Project Classification Unknown. I traced these shipments through shell companies and false documentation, Rebecca continued. The equipment is being sent to a facility that officially doesn't exist. David studied the data and felt sick. Someone is building fake alien weapons? Using human technology. It gets worse, Rebecca said. She activated another display showing personnel files. Every engineer whose work has appeared in Vorthik technology receives special security clearances and access to classified projects. We were specifically chosen for this. The files showed a pattern of recruitment that went back years before the war began. Engineers with expertise in specific technologies were identified, recruited, and their work was then copied for the alien forces. It was as if someone had been planning the war long before it started. Rebecca led David to a secure communication terminal. I'm going to show you something that will change everything you believe about this war. But once you see it, there's no going back. She entered a series of codes and accessed a restricted database. The files that appeared made David's hands shake. Dr. Harrison Wells, the famous synapsichologist who had established first contact protocols with the Vorthak, wasn't just a scientist, he was the architect of the entire deception. His research facility contained decades of work on interspecies conflict simulation and psychological manipulation, the database showed. Wells' true research, creating believable alien enemies for psychological warfare against human populations. His work involved detailed studies of human fear responses, tribal instincts, and the psychological effects of external threats on social unity. Wells has been studying how to manipulate human behavior through manufactured threats, Rebecca explained. His research shows that humans become more cooperative, innovative, and productive when facing an external enemy. David scrolled through the files and found technical specifications that made him gasp. The Vorthak weren't just using human technology, they weren't real aliens at all. The entire species was an elaborate fabrication using advanced holographic projectors, artificial intelligence, and sophisticated robotics. The Vorthik ships were unmanned drones controlled by quantum computers, programmed to simulate alien tactical thinking. The alien soldiers were sophisticated androids designed to look convincingly non-human. Even the Vorthik language was artificially generated by linguistics programs. "This is impossible," David whispered. The scale of this deception would require thousands of people, massive resources, unlimited funding. Rebecca showed him financial records that revealed the scope of the conspiracy. A shadow organization called The Synthesis had been funneling resources into the project for over a decade. The organization included military contractors, government officials, corporate leaders, and scientists from multiple Earth colonies. The Synthesis had orchestrated the fake war to solve what they saw as humanity's fundamental problems: internal conflicts, resource competition, and lack of unified purpose. By creating an external threat, they forced humanity to work together and achieve technological and social advances that would have taken centuries under normal circumstances. They're not evil, Rebecca said quietly. They genuinely believe they're saving humanity from self-destruction. David found communications between Synthesis leaders discussing their goals. They wanted to transform humanity into a unified species capable of expansion across the galaxy. The fake war was designed to accelerate human development and create a strong military culture that could handle real threats when they eventually appeared, but the cost was enormous. Billions of people lived their lives believing in a lie, soldiers died in battles staged for psychological effect, and entire colonies were shaped by artificial threats. Humanity's greatest achievements in recent years were built on deception. "We have to expose this," David said. Rebecca's expression darkened. "That's what I thought too, until I tried to contact other people who had discovered pieces of the truth." She showed him a list of names, scientists, engineers, and military officers, who had raised questions about inconsistencies in the war. Next to each name was a status report. Some had been transferred to remote assignments, others had suffered mysterious accidents, and several had simply disappeared. "The synthesis doesn't just maintain the illusion of the war," Rebecca explained. "They maintain the illusion that no one has figured it out." David realized they were in terrible danger. If the organization was willing to eliminate people who threatened the deception, then his discovery of his own technology and alien weapons had already marked him as a threat. But as they prepared to leave the workshop, alarms began sounding throughout. The base security forces were conducting a surprise inspection, searching for security breaches and unauthorized research. Rebecca grabbed David's arm. "They know we've been investigating. We need to get out of here now." They gathered the evidence and fled through maintenance tunnels as security teams searched the facility. Behind them, David could hear orders being given to locate Colonel Stone and Engineer Kim for routine questioning about classified materials. As they escaped into the night, David realized that discovering the truth was only the beginning. Now, they had to survive long enough to do something about it, and the synthesis had vast resources and influence throughout human space. The fake war continued around them, with soldiers fighting bravely against enemies that didn't exist, while the real enemy worked to maintain their perfect deception. David and Rebecca were now fugitives in their own society, carrying evidence that could destroy everything humanity believed about itself, but they also carried the hope that humanity could handle the truth and choose its own path forward, free from the puppet masters who thought they knew what was best for the species. The question was whether they could expose the conspiracy before the synthesis decided that the risk was too great to allow them to live. The war was fake, but the danger they faced was terrifyingly real, and somewhere in the shadows, the puppet masters were already planning their next move to protect the greatest deception in human history. Commander Alex Foster sat in the hidden base carved deep into an asteroid in the outer rim, surrounded by the faces of 37 military officers who had discovered pieces of the truth about the HFY War. Each person in the room had risked everything to be here, and each carried evidence that the greatest conflict in human history was nothing more than an elaborate lie. Major Patricia Wells, no relation to the infamous Dr. Harrison Wells, spread holographic displays across the conference table. Her data showed battle statistics from 50 engagements across human space, and the pattern was undeniable once you knew what to look for. "Every single battle follows the same formula," Patricia explained. "The Vorthak attack with overwhelming force, humanity appears to be losing, then something happens that turns the tide. The timing is too perfect, the casualties are too low, and the strategic gains are too convenient." Foster nodded grimly. He had been tracking these patterns for 6 months, ever since he noticed that Vorthak weapons seemed designed to cause spectacular damage with minimal actual harm. Buildings collapsed in dramatic fashion, but evacuation centers were never hit. Ships exploded impressively, but life pods always managed to escape. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison spoke up from across the table. He was the group's specialist in alien technology, and his discoveries had been crucial to understanding the scope of the deception. "I've analyzed captured Vorthak equipment from 12 different battles," Jake said. "The components are all human-made, but they're assembled in a way that creates intentional weaknesses. These weapons are designed to look powerful while being deliberately ineffective. Foster activated his personal datapad and showed the group their most disturbing discovery. Through careful investigation and dangerous infiltration missions, they had identified the true enemy, an organization called the Synthesis. The Synthesis isn't just staging a fake war, Foster explained. They're using it to conduct the largest psychological experiment in human history. They're studying how manufactured threats affect human development, cooperation, and social evolution. Dr. Rachel Hayes entered the conference room, and the atmosphere immediately became tense. She was a former member of the Synthesis who had contacted Foster with crucial intelligence, but many in the resistance didn't trust her. Her auburn hair was graying at the temples, and her green eyes showed the strain of carrying terrible secrets. "I know you don't trust me," Rachel said as she took a seat. "But I have information about the Synthesis's next phase that will make everything we've discussed seem small by comparison." She activated a holographic projector and showed the group classified documents from the Synthesis archives. The files detailed something called Operation Escalation, a plan to stage a catastrophic attack on Earth's capital that would justify the implementation of martial law across all human colonies. "They're planning to fake a Vorthic assault on Geneva Central," Rachel explained. "The attack will appear to cause massive casualties, but the victims will be crisis actors and holographic projections. The goal is to traumatize humanity into accepting permanent military control." Foster studied the operation details with growing horror. The plan was incredibly sophisticated, involving fake news broadcasts, staged rescue operations, and carefully orchestrated government responses. The attack would be designed to make humanity believe they were facing extinction, justifying any measures necessary for survival. "But that's not the worst part," Rachel continued. "Once martial law is established, the Synthesis plans to introduce new alien threats. They've already developed the technology to simulate multiple alien species, each more dangerous than the last. Humanity will be kept in a permanent state of war, never knowing peace or questioning their leaders." Major Patricia Wells raised her hand. "Why? What do they gain from this?" Rachel's expression grew dark. "Control. Complete control over human development. They believe democracy is inefficient, that human nature is fundamentally flawed, and that only through carefully managed threats can humanity reach its full potential." She showed them economic projections that revealed the Synthesis's true goals. By controlling humanity through manufactured threats, they could direct human resources toward specific technological developments, shape social evolution, and position themselves as the permanent governing class of human space. "They're creating a warrior species," Rachel said. "Humanity will become the galaxy's premier military force, with the Synthesis selling human soldiers and technology to real alien conflicts. We'll be mercenaries for the rest of the universe, never knowing we're being used." Foster stood and paced around the room. The scope of the conspiracy was overwhelming, but they had a responsibility to expose it before Operation Escalation could be implemented. "How long do we have?" he asked. 3 weeks, Rachel replied. "The attack on Geneva Central is scheduled to coincide with the anniversary of first contact with the Vorthak. The symbolism is important to their psychological manipulation." Lieutenant Commander Morrison pulled up technical specifications for the broadcasting equipment the Synthesis used to maintain the illusion of alien communications. "If we can access their primary transmission facility, we might be able to broadcast the truth to all human colonies simultaneously." Foster liked the idea, but Rachel shook her head. "The transmission facility is heavily guarded, and the Synthesis has sleeper agents throughout the military. Any large-scale operation would be detected and stopped before we could complete the broadcast." She paused and looked around the room at the faces of the resistance members. "There's something else you need to know about the Synthesis. They've been monitoring resistance movements from the beginning. They know about groups like ours, and they've been using us to identify potential threats to their operation." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Foster felt his blood run cold. "Are you saying we're compromised?" I'm saying that some of the people in this room are reporting to the synthesis, Rachel replied. Not necessarily willingly. They may have been conditioned through psychological manipulation, or they may be under duress. But the information we've gathered, the plans we've made, all of it has been monitored. Foster looked around the table at faces he had trusted with his life. Any one of them could be a synthesis agent, feeding information back to the enemy while appearing to work for the resistance. Major Wells stood up abruptly. This is paranoid nonsense. We've all sacrificed everything to be here. The synthesis may be powerful, but they're not omniscient, aren't they? Rachel asked. She activated another display showing surveillance footage from resistance safe houses across human space. The images showed synthesis agents observing resistance members, tracking their movements and documenting their activities. Every major resistance cell has been penetrated, she explained. The synthesis allows you to operate because you serve their purposes. You identify other people who might discover the truth, you test their security systems, and you provide them with intelligence about how humans react to discovering uncomfortable truths. Foster realized they had walked into a trap that had been years in the making. The resistance wasn't fighting the synthesis, they were working for them without knowing it. Then we're finished, Morrison said quietly. Not yet, Rachel replied. I have a plan, but it requires us to do something that goes against every instinct you have. We need to trust each other completely, even knowing that some of us may be compromised. She outlined a desperate strategy that would require the resistance to split into multiple groups, each pursuing different objectives simultaneously. The plan was designed to overwhelm the synthesis's ability to track and counter all their operations at once, but as Rachel spoke, Foster noticed something that made his heart sink. Lieutenant Commander Morrison was quietly recording the conversation on his personal device, and the data was being transmitted to an unknown recipient. The resistance had been compromised from the beginning, and now they faced the terrible choice of continuing to fight knowing they were being watched, or surrendering to a deception that had shaped every aspect of human society. Foster made his decision. Even if the synthesis was monitoring them, even if some resistance members were secretly working for the enemy, the truth had to come out. Humanity deserved to know what had been done to them, and they deserved the chance to choose their own future. The fake war would end one way or another, and the puppet masters would finally face the consequences of their perfect deception. Lieutenant Commander Grace Murphy stood alone in the ruins of the resistance base, surrounded by the bodies of her fallen comrades. The synthesis strike team had moved with surgical precision, eliminating every resistance member except her. She had survived only because she had been in the outer tunnels when the attack began, and now she carried the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. The datapad in her hands contained everything the resistance had discovered about the fake war, technical specifications, financial records, psychological profiles, and most importantly, the access codes to the synthesis's primary broadcasting network. She was the only person left who could expose the truth to humanity, but she faced an impossible choice. Director Nathan Cross of the synthesis stood in his office aboard the massive space station hidden in the shadow of Jupiter, watching real-time intelligence reports from across human space. His gray beard was perfectly trimmed, and his dark eyes showed the confidence of a man who had successfully manipulated an entire species for over a decade. The resistance has been neutralized, reported his aide, a young woman named Victoria. Chin. All members except Lieutenant Commander Murphy have been eliminated or captured. Cross nodded with satisfaction. And Murphy? She escaped with the broadcasting codes as planned. Our psychological profile suggests she will attempt to expose the truth within the next 24 hours, Cross smiled. Everything was proceeding exactly as the synthesis had designed. Even the resistance had served their purposes, identifying potential threats and testing their security systems. Now they would use Murphy's desperate attempt to broadcast the truth as justification for Operation Escalation. Murphy made her way through the abandoned mining station where the resistance had hidden their emergency broadcasting equipment. The station was old and barely functional, But its quantum transmitter could reach every human colony if she could access the synthesis's network dot as she worked to establish the connection. She thought about Commander Foster's final words before the attack. Even if they're watching us, even if they know what we're planning, we have to try. Humanity deserves the truth. The transmitter hummed to life, and Murphy began uploading the Resistance's evidence to the broadcast network. But before she could initiate the transmission, holographic projectors activated around her, and Director Cross appeared in the room. "Lieutenant." "Commander Murphy," Cross said pleasantly. "Thank you for coming this far. You've performed admirably." Murphy drew her weapon, but Cross raised his hand peacefully. "There's no need for violence. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to offer you a choice." The hologram gestured to a chair, and Murphy remained standing, her weapon trained on the projection. "You believe you're here to expose a terrible conspiracy," Cross continued. "But let me show you what you would really be destroying." The room filled with holographic displays showing human colonies across the galaxy. Each display showed thriving communities, advanced technology, and peaceful cooperation between different human cultures. "Before the HFY War, humanity was destroying itself," Cross explained. "Resource wars, religious conflicts, territorial disputes. We were on track to extinction within 50 years. The fake war saved us." Murphy studied the displays and saw the truth in the data. Human technology had advanced by centuries in just 3 years of war. Medical breakthroughs, energy systems, space travel technology, all driven by the need to fight a superior enemy. "We didn't just unite humanity," Cross said. "We forced them to become better than they ever could have been naturally." He showed her mortality statistics that were shocking in their implications. Despite the supposed war, human deaths from violence had dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history. The fake battles had eliminated the need for real conflicts over resources and territory. "The HFY War has saved more human lives than any peace treaty in history," Cross continued. "We've given humanity purpose, direction, and hope for the future." Murphy lowered her weapon slightly. "But it's built on lies." "All civilizations are built on necessary lies," Cross replied. "The question is whether those lies serve humanity or destroy it." He activated another display showing communications from real alien species throughout the galaxy. Murphy read the messages with growing amazement. Other civilizations were watching humanity's war with respect and admiration, unaware that the conflict was staged. "Humanity has gained a reputation as a formidable military power," Cross explained. "When real threats emerge, other species will turn to us for protection. We'll become the galaxy's peacekeepers, respected and feared throughout known space." Murphy felt her resolve wavering. The evidence was overwhelming that the synthesis had genuinely improved human civilization, even though their methods were deceptive. "But what about choice?" she asked. "What about the right to determine our own future?" Cross's expression grew sad. "Humans make terrible choices when left to their own devices. Democracy leads to paralysis, individual freedom leads to chaos, and natural development leads to extinction. We've given humanity a better path." He showed her projections of what would happen if the truth was revealed. Human society would fragment as people chose different responses to the revelation. Some would demand revenge against the synthesis. Others would refuse to believe the evidence. And still others would sink into despair at learning their achievements were manufactured. "The unity we've created would shatter," Cross warned. "Humanity would return to the destructive patterns that nearly destroyed us before the war began." Murphy raised her weapon again, but her hands were shaking. "That's not your choice to make, isn't it?" Cross asked. "We have the knowledge, the resources, and the vision to guide humanity toward greatness. Why should we allow ignorance and chaos to triumph over wisdom and order?" Before Murphy could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Victoria Chun's voice came through the communication system. "Director, we're detecting multiple alien contacts approaching the Sol system. These aren't our simulations. They're real ships." Cross's confident expression faltered. "How many? Over 300 vessels of unknown configuration?" Their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than our simulations. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. Murphy stared at Cross as the implications sank in. Real aliens were approaching Earth, and humanity's entire military was designed to fight fake enemies. Your perfect deception has left us defenseless against actual threats, Murphy said. Cross activated emergency protocols and began issuing orders to hidden synthesis facilities throughout the solar system. We can adapt. Our technology is advanced enough to handle real threats. But Murphy was already moving toward the broadcasting equipment. The approaching aliens changed everything. Humanity needed to know the truth so they could respond to real danger instead of fighting imaginary enemies. If you broadcast that information now, you'll destroy humanity's confidence at the moment they need it most, Cross warned. Murphy's finger hovered over the transmission control. Around her, the evidence of the synthesis's deception filled the air in holographic displays. Behind that evidence was the promise of real aliens approaching Earth with unknown intentions. Maybe humanity needs to face real challenges instead of manufactured ones, she said. She activated the transmission, and the truth about the fake war began broadcasting to every human colony in the galaxy. Across human space, people watched in shock as evidence of the deception unfolded before their eyes. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some colonies demanded immediate action against the synthesis, while others refused to believe the evidence. Military units split as officers chose between following orders from potentially compromised commanders and acting on their own judgment. But as the alien fleet approached Earth, something unexpected happened. Instead of fragmenting completely, many humans began working together to face the new threat. The skills they had learned fighting fake enemies proved surprisingly effective against real ones. The approaching aliens turned out to be peaceful explorers who had been drawn by humanity's reputation as a powerful military species. They offered trade agreements and cultural exchange, impressed by what they believed was humanity's successful defense against the Vorthic Empire. Murphy watched from the broadcasting station as humanity faced its first real test since the deception ended. Some colonies chose to continue living the lie, maintaining the pretense that the Vorthic War was real. Others embraced the truth and began building new forms of government. Based on transparency and choice, the synthesis control crumbled as their manufactured unity gave way to genuine human diversity. Some members of the organization were prosecuted for their crimes, while others were forgiven by communities that recognized their good intentions despite their terrible methods. Cross surrendered peacefully and spent his remaining years studying whether humanity could maintain the advances they had achieved through deception. His final report concluded that humans were more resilient and adaptable than the synthesis had ever imagined. Murphy became a symbol of humanity's choice to face truth over comfortable lies, even when that truth was dangerous and uncertain. She helped establish new institutions designed to prevent future deceptions while preserving the technological and social advances that had emerged from the fake war. Years later, as humanity expanded across the galaxy as a respected member of the galactic community, the question remained whether they could have achieved the same greatness through honest means. But for the first time in their history, humans faced that question with their eyes open, making their own choices about their future among the stars. The war was fake, but humanity's potential was real, and now they would discover what they could achieve when they stopped fighting shadows and started building their own destiny.